Okay. Anyway, go ahead. What's the
God
topic?
bless him.
What's the topic for tonight?
Our topic is evolution versus creation.
Okay.
It's supposedly an open discussion. We've given some ground rules already. Mostly one, which is no ad hominems will be allowed. We want to stick to the subject, and I'm gonna try to bring you here very well because the changes, the spots will be changing. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, that's Steven. And I would like to, respecting your time, I would like to give the floor to anyone who would like to ask a question.
Yeah, I would like to ask a question.
Okay, Mark Reed is the first. Hello, Mark, by the way.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine.
And hello, Mr. Hovind.
Round one.
My question is, what does the evolutionary biologists not do that other sciences do that would prevent them from being a science? So what I'm really asking, and I realize that may be a bit convoluted, but I'm asking you what it is that other sciences do that evolutionary biology does not, that would make them a science, like physics a science and evolutionary biology not a science.
Is that a question for me? There's about 10 people on board here.
Well, yeah,
They will be
Mr.
for you.
Hovind, yeah.
They will. All the questions are for you.
Okay.
A little book.
The word science means knowledge. What do we know? From observation, from experiments. So it's the definition of science, standard definition. Look it up on any place, any dictionary. Science means knowledge. What do we know? We know dogs produce dogs. We know that. We've watched it happen. We do not know dogs are related to bananas. These family trees they put in our textbooks are not science. It is science to say dogs produce dogs. It is not science to say dogs come from an amoeba. And it's not science to say all of life came from a soup in the ocean, and which came from a rock. That's why I point out, you better first define what you mean by evolution. It is scientifically accurate to say all the varieties of dogs probably had a common ancestor. Nobody would argue with that. But you guys want to say, well, that therefore proves dogs are related to mosquitoes. That's not science. That's all. Science, what we can observe, study, test. Even if it's true that dogs are related to mosquitoes, it's not. I don't believe so. But even if it were true, it's not part of science because science is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. These family trees that are taught in our textbooks are propaganda. They're artwork. They're not science. That's what biologists do, though. They study the evidence to show, wow, look at how many varieties of mosquitoes there are today. Okay. And then they jump to the wild conclusion that mosquitoes are related to cows. I don't think that's common sense. I think that's illogical. That's not science. That's all. I wish they could admit science, so we can observe, study, test. This chart is not science. None of these charts are this textbook, biology textbook, says all the many forms of life on Earth today are related to a common ancestor. That's not science. We don't know that. You might believe that very strongly. Okay, believe what you want. I believe very strongly God made the world, but I don't require that be taught in the textbooks at public schools at taxpayer expense. You guys want this religion of evolution to be taught. You want these family trees to be in our textbook as if it's part of science, and everybody's required to pay for this. This isn't science. So what biologists do, to answer your question, they do good research on finding how many varieties of potatoes there are, and then they jump to the wild conclusion that potatoes are related to camels. That's not science.
Thank you, Dr. Hovind. Mark?
There's a lot to respond to in that, actually. There's a whole lot of there, starting with the etymological fallacy that you made.
Etymological fallacy is the faulty argument that the true meaning of a word is its oldest or original meaning.
Here are some examples. Person A. The critics say that painting is awful. Premise 2. Most people agree that the painting is awful. Therefore, the painting is very bad. Person B. No. The original meaning of awful means awe-inspiring. So that means the painting is actually very well painted. Well, clearly this is a fallacy because it seems like a charitable interpretation of person A's argument would be to use the modern definition of awful, not the original definition of it, which means very bad, not awe-inspiring. And so person B is committing this fallacy because they're misinterpreting person A's use of the word. All right, person A, John is nice, therefore he's a good person. Person B, no, the original meaning of nice is foolish, so John must be foolish. Once again, clearly person B is interpreting this argument incorrectly, not using the correct term or the meaning of nice that person A means to be using or is intending to use in the argument, not being charitable with that argument. It's not to say that there is a right or wrong meaning of nice. If you're reading a text from a particular time period and interpreting nice as a good-natured person, you may be interpreting that inaccurately. The point is to bring context to it, not to have an argument about semantics.
The origin of a word. So this is a fallacy, a genetic fallacy that
The genetic fallacy occurs when you assert the truth value of a claim based on its source. So you hear a claim, identify the source, a source which has some positive or negative attribute, and use this to form a conclusion about the claim.
This is a fallacy, a genetic fallacy that basically says because a word's origin means, for instance, science, wisdom, yeah, so that's an etymological fallacy. You're basically saying because it used to mean this, then it means this the same day. That's not true. It's like saying, hey, the F word comes from German meaning to strike, so therefore that's what it means. It's not a curse word. That's wrong. It is a curse word. That's what it is. It's an etymology fallacy. So you're making that fallacy right there. Science has a different meaning than what it used to in Latin. You're making a completely wrong assertion there. Observe, study, and test. We do observe, study, and test evolution. There's multiple experiments that we've done. You're sort of trying to conflate that we need to observe it directly, but no one's ever seen the Earth go around the sun directly. No one's ever seen an electron directly. It's all indirect things that we've tested and observed in a secondhand way from the effects they produce, not from observing it directly. That's how science works. And you're sort of showing that you don't understand the role of observation in science here.
Ad hominem fallacy. The ad hominem fallacy happens when someone attempts to discredit someone's argument with personal attacks rather than the substance of the argument itself.
And when we say we believe it, it's also that the scientific institutions in America and around the world have completely backed this scientific principle.
Genetic fallacy. The genetic fallacy is the act of rejecting or accepting an argument solely on the basis of its origin rather than its content. Appeal to authority fallacy. It is a form of argument in which the mere fact that an influential figure holds a certain position is used as evidence that the position itself is correct.
Albert Einstein once said, "What is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right." This is certainly the case when it comes to ad populum fallacies, or the appeal to popularity. Most simply put, this fallacy goes like this. If many believe so, it is so. This would be an example of an ad populum fallacy. It is saying that if many people believe the president is doing a great job, then he is doing a great job. This is obviously not the case, since groups of people can be wrong. Hitler and the Nazi Party, for example, had high approval ratings. Does this mean Hitler did a great job? Now, popularity, or a general understanding by a group of people or experts, should not be disregarded. In fact, a prevailing belief can be true. However, popular opinion as evidence to prove something as true or false is fallacious. Famed scientist Stephen Hawking wrote, "When a book was published entitled 100 Authors Against Einstein, he, Albert Einstein, retorted, 'If I were wrong, then one would have been enough.'" Here, Einstein makes the point that if you seek to disprove something, use evidence, not popular opinion.
It is only your religious belief that rejects it, because you have to start with the Bible because you're a fundamentalist Baptist. You start with the Bible and say it cannot be true because of the Bible. That is not how science works.
Red herring fallacy. A red herring is something that misleads or distracts from a relevant or important question. It might be used to change the subject. Texas sharpshooter fallacy. The Texas sharpshooter fallacy takes its name from the metaphor of a gunman shooting and then drawing targets around the bullet hole clusters to make it look like he hit the target. It illustrates how people first figure out what their conclusion is and then go looking for data that supports it, ignoring differences and randomness.
Science is observing something that changes, in this case, the allele frequency changing over time, and then finding out the reason why and modeling it. The Bible is irrelevant to whether we teach science. And if you don't like that part of science, don't study science, because that's how it works. It doesn't give any favoritism to your book, the Muslim's book, or anybody else's book. It simply uses a process to find out the natural laws of the universe. And that's what it does.
Thought terminating cliche. It's a form of loaded language, often passing as folk wisdom, with the function of stopping an argument from proceeding further, ending the debate with a cliche rather than a point.
It's because that's how it works. It doesn't give any favoritism to your book, the Muslim's book, or anybody else's book. It simply uses a process to find out the natural laws of the universe. And that's what it does. So there's all problems with what you've said, starting with the main fallacy that you made. It is because in the 1900s, that was the Latin definition of science. Then that must be the definition today. That is a fallacy, the etymological fallacy.
Ignoratio elenchi. Ignoratio elenchi, also called missing the point, is the fallacy of presenting an argument that may or may not be logically valid and sound, but whose conclusion fails to address the issue in question.
Okay, well, you've given me about 14 different topics there. I'd like to go one topic.
Well, you brought up multiple topics, so okay. I'm just responding to the ones
Mark?
you brought up.
Projection is the most classical defense of the narcissist. And this is something that's been written about in the granddaddies of the field, Freud and Kernberg and all of them. Now, it makes sense because projection is deep and primitive, just like the insecurity and the ego vulnerability of the narcissist. And how bizarre it is that they are accusing you of the very thing that they do. They may accuse you, the narcissist in your life, of lots of odd things, accusing you of being angry when you're not, saying that they think you feel disappointed about something when you're actually fine with it. You may actually think right now, and I'm sure you do, think that I'm describing gaslighting. But the accusation of something out of the blue that is patently untrue is in fact a primitive defense that is called projection. And yeah, there's some gaslighting in there, but it's projection. And a person who's a narcissist will likely start gaslighting you or calling you crazy or paranoid or insane.
This is a problem. If you want a gish gallop, I'll respond to every single one.
I did just give you ample time though to respond to the points. Fine. So now I'm going to give him ample time, and then I will again give you ample time, unless Face Theory or Claude want to chime in. And I think it'll be more productive that way. So thank you for participating, Kent.
Okay. If he would like to change the definition of science to match his religion, that all things are related, that I don't think is logical. I don't think that's wise to do. Science means what do we know? And if some scientists have concluded that we can go beyond it, I think we could infer very logically that the sun does indeed, the earth is spinning and be from the sun going up and going down. I think people on the other side, we could call somebody in Australia, it's sunny over there. They'd say, sure. So I think we could show scientifically that the earth is round and it spins around. So that equating the sun and the things we know scientifically without observing to evolution is a very false equivalency. Nobody has ever observed or ever seen how it could happen for these family trees, for a protozoa to turn to a human and an ape and a bird. You want these taught in schools like this is science. This is not science. All of this is inferred. It's a religious belief. These family trees are propaganda. There is probably a family tree of dogs. There's probably a family tree of tomatoes. Tomatoes and dogs are related going back in time. How do you come to that wild conclusion? Do you believe dogs and tomatoes are related?
I posted a statistical study that comes to that exact conclusion using the statistics of genetics and phylogenetic comparison. They literally do a comparison for separate ancestry versus common ancestry, and they show unequivocally, mathematically, separate ancestry is debunked, common ancestry is supported by the actual statistics of genetics.
Those statistics did not consider, I just want to point out that study didn't consider created differences. It didn't consider created heterozygosity. So it's essentially a straw man against the creation model.
Well, it also doesn't take into account that all of the genetics falls into that model. So you may not believe it and call it propaganda, but it's not based upon nothing.
Well, that's an assertion. The genetics support separate ancestry.
Excuse me. Our understanding of the genetics and the way that all of these animals are related to each other. Even if you just look at things like endogenous retroviruses, the closer they are in that tree, the more viruses they share with each other. And you cannot dispute that because that has been absolutely proven. You said we don't show the scientifically the evolution, but we do. That's the
let's go one point at a time. He brought up ERVs. Let's deal with ERVs.
The problem is that
Marguerite, don't slap and run. Don't slap and run. Okay, you know better than this. You know better than this. You're a big boy, Mark. Mark, you're a big boy. One top.
Could Donnie please be actually independent instead of chiming in on Mr. Hovind's side?
I'm not here to moderate. I'm here to debate.
Well,
I was invited here to debate. I'm not moderating.
Hold it.
Look, don't bring up multiple points, and the same is true for you. If you're saying don't bring up multiple points, you do the same. Kent brought up 4 points. I tried to address all of them, but he wants to slap and run. This is hypocrisy at its greatest degree. You bring up 4 points, we try to address one, go to the next one, and then you say, oh, no, you're bringing up
here's what we're going to do.
Let's respect Kent's time here.
I'm going to let Kent bring you 1 point.
Gish Gallop is what it's called.
Who on earth is moderating this? Who's in charge?
I'm in charge, and I'm going to start muting mics because people don't want to play.
I don't understand when you say I'm in charge. Who is the I? Who are you?
Stephen.
You're in charge. Would you please, Stephen, would you moderate? Shut off the other mics when it's one person to talk. I won't interrupt. He asked me the definition of science. I said science has always been what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. If he wishes to add more to that, well, we can infer that tomatoes and camels are related. That's not science. But he wants to stretch make a new definition of science to include his religion. I resent that. That is corrupting science. So I asked him the simple question. I don't remember exactly what it was. Do you believe, let's pick a new one. Do you believe potatoes and camels have a common ancestor? Simple question. And please shut off my mic when it's his turn to talk.
All right, Ken.
Fantastic. So I was going to get to that, but I was interrupted before because you made multiple points. And no, we're not changing the definition of the word. You're using an old dictionary from the 1900s to say this is what science means, when it doesn't mean that word anymore. I already pointed out that's a fallacy of etymology. It is a genetic fallacy that basically you're taking a specific definition that's old and not used anymore and trying to apply it. And so when my question back to you, because you do this conflation all the time, do you mean related as in I am related to my brother or sister? Or do you mean related as in we have a common ancestor? What do you mean?
All right, Mark, I'm muting your mic. Kent, you're unmuted.
Okay. These definitions I'm showing of science were taken off the internet about a month ago. This is not 19th century science, okay? Look up science today. Google the word science. It will say knowledge gained through observations, testing, experiments, okay? How do you define science? Science is knowledge through study or practice. Science refers to acquiring knowledge. The system observation, experimentation to describe and explain natural phenomena. Don't accuse me of using a 19th century dictionary. This is the definition of science. Science, what we can observe. We do not observe cows produce non-cows or dogs produce non-dogs. I asked you the question, and you say, you just throw out the word genetics. Is that supposed to mean something? All the genetics shows there may be variations of the genetics of the different animals, proving a common designer. Doesn't prove a common ancestor. It could just as well prove a common designer. As I pointed out many times, almost all the programs coming out of Microsoft, Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, have thousands of identical lines of code, proving the same guys are writing the code, not proving they came from a common ancestor. You guys see the complex genetics of these different creatures and think they're proof they're related because there's some similarities. That's proof the same designer wrote the code. So I ask you again, do you think a potato and a camel came from a common ancestor? Is that question more suitable? Did the potato and a camel have a common ancestor like these charts show? These family trees show all the vegetables, all the humans, all the animals had a common ancestor. Is this part of science in your religion, Mark?
Well, that's a loaded question. It's not a religion for a start, so that's absolutely a loaded question.
Loaded question. A loaded question is a question that already contains an assumption.
There's just no evidence of it. And this is why religions are called faiths, collectively. Because you believe something in the absence of evidence. That's what it is. That's why it's called faith. Otherwise, we would call all religions evidence.
And this is what you went from genetic fallacy to the Microsoft to programming to common ancestors.
Humiliation.
I am sorry, I've been very patient. No, what you are doing, Mark, has nothing to do with the argument that you were presented with. You have your response, you got it 3 times, and you keep reading all the other things that you've written down, and you keep accusing, creating ad hominems, creating straw men, and we have other people around that they want to take this seriously. So, I'm sorry, Dr. Hovind. I know you have limited time, and I know all these attacks against you, and we will try our best to moderate this. Unless someone,
Base theory,
yes, I would give this to Grayson, unless someone else has something to say.
Yeah, well, I do have a question that maybe between Mr. Hovind and Grayson can answer. The other day, Grayson recently laid out clearly in the discussion at DIL why there are different age layers of the Earth. And Mr. Hovind said you'd need to do some more work. You wanted to hurry on from that.
Here she comes to wreck the day!
So how about your response now to his points as to why the layers were a different age?
Is that for Grayson or for me? I don't understand.
That's for you, and he can comment on it once you've given your answer, your response.
Okay.
You discussed it the other day on when he visited DAL. Yeah.
And he's welcome to come back. All of you, welcome to come anytime. Mark, come on down, visit DAL, all of you. Okay.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is the question. We've heard that the people are welcome. We hear that all the time.
All right, go ahead, Doctor.
I'm sorry, I got off topic. You're invited. I'm answering the question. I think it is common sense. If you look at all these layers of the Earth that we see, there's no question the Earth has layers. Stratigraphy, I taught Earth science 15 years. I've been to all 50 states and 37 countries. I'm pretty familiar with this. There's no question the Earth has layers. I've been to Grand Canyon, top and bottom several times. Been all over the United States. Okay. The question is, how can we start? In 1830, they started teaching that the layers form vertically and the top layer is younger. How can it possibly be younger? Where is it coming from? Is it coming from outer space? Every molecule of dirt on the planet is the same age, whether it's 6,000 or 6 trillion. I point out that the moon holding our tide under the moon, the tidal bulge, if the Earth were spinning under that moon, under the tide, and the continents were not in the way to interrupt it, right now the tide goes up and down. It varies from place to place. Bay of Fundy is greater, etc. But about a 5-foot average tide up and down, because it keeps banging into things like continents and getting interrupted. During Noah's flood, the Bible teaches the world was covered in water. I believe the science points to that, because if the Earth tides were not interrupted, they would become harmonic and go up and down 200 feet. If the water's going up and down 200 feet every 6 hours, 12 and a half minutes, that tidal pumping in and out of that bump, the water's going sideways. That's what formed all the layers. That's how you can easily explain polystrata fossils. There are thousands of trees standing up, running through all these layers. It's not a unique phenomena. They're all over the world. And yet they want to say these layers are different ages. I think a tree could stand there for a year while the tide going up and down makes new layers sideways, but it's not going to stand there for millions of years. And they don't answer this except to say it's an anomaly. No, there's lots of them. North of me in Birmingham, Alabama, there's a coal mine with lots of petrified trees standing up, running through these layers. My point is, it is not logical to say these layers are millions of years different in age when we have petrified trees connecting them. And where is the layer coming from? Where was the Holocene sitting? Where was all that dirt sitting for 2.5 billion years? I just say there is no geologic column. It was made up in 1830. It does not exist anywhere in the world except the textbooks. It's silly to believe these layers are different ages. That's my humble opinion on the topic. Okay.
Okay, well, I'll leave it to Grayson, maybe if I can ask him to step in. But you did mention that you took.
All right, thank you for that, Claude. That was your question, and you said you were going to let base theory answer it.
Can I just get one more?
Yes,
related.
Quickly, Claude. Yes.
Yes. When you were teaching earth science, what was your highest qualification that you?
All right. So thank you for participating, Claude, but not really. All right, so base theory, we're going to give it to you if you want to actually address
Round 2. Yeah, okay. So what Kent just went through was, I would say, a straw man for specifically him saying that we have polystrate fossils connecting layers that are like the scientists say are millions of years apart. I challenge one person to find, I challenge anybody to find me one example of this, because that's just not the case.
Now, either he's ignorant or he's lying. I hope he's just ignorant, because ignorance can be fixed. You see, stupid is forever, but ignorance can be fixed. That's the difference, by the way.
I would challenge you to find one polystrate fossil, one polystrate tree that is going through layers that the scientific consensus say, oh, this is a Carboniferous layer, here's a Permian, here's a Triassic, and it's going through all of them. Because every time for each of these polystrate examples, when you actually look at what is the consensus dates for these different layers that it's going through, it's all within a couple years of each other. It's not like they're saying this layer is millions of years older than this layer, and this fossil is going through them. If you have even one example of a fossil that's going through layers that the scientists are saying are millions of years different in age, I would like to see that, because all the examples I've ever seen of these polystrate fossils are all going through layers that the scientists agree all formed within the same general age range.
This video is going to be addressing polystrate fossils and moon dust, which are two popular creationist claims. Now, polystrate fossils are trees that are found going through several quote-unquote layers or strata in the fossil record. They're completely fossilized and they are vertical, and creationists claim, well, if these layers are of different dates, millions of years, then that would require these trees being exposed upright for millions of years, and the chance of them becoming unmolested and fossilizing as they are slim to none, and they're absolutely right. Fortunately, they aren't going through several layers or several strata. They are deep, but they are within the same date. This is a distinction that is best illustrated by this image right here. On the left, you can see what creationists are claiming and what they believe it is, and on the right, you can see exactly what it is. Basically, what happens is a tree in some sort of depression, a valley, for example, there's a flood. It gets covered in debris, like in a mudslide. The tree fossilizes. Now, all the mud is not a different date. All the mud is the same date. All the mud is the same date.
When we have polystrate fossils, the scientific consensus is literally saying that those polystrate fossils are between layers that are very close in time, like between a few years to a decade or two. Like between a few years to a decade or two.
You kids are going to be taught that each of the layers of the earth is a different age. They've got Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Archaeozoic. Did you know the whole geologic column is baloney? It doesn't exist. We covered that on video 4. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting these rock layers. Petrified tree connecting a bunch of layers can't be millions of years difference in the age of those layers. One in Cookeville, Tennessee, not far from here. The bottom is coalified, the center is petrified, the top is coalified again. Runs through 2 coal seams. Okay? A friend of mine from Louisiana is a pastor of a church. He said, Brother Hovind, I used to work in the oil field, drilling in the Gulf of Mississippi, in the Gulf of Mexico, drilling for oil. He said, we drilled down through 14,000 feet of mud and hit trees 60 feet tall, standing up. 60-foot vertical trees under 14,000 feet of mud. Now, they tell you the layers are different ages. That's simply baloney, okay? All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting these different rock layers. Petrified trees standing up. Now, how long does a dead tree stand up around here before it falls down? 5 years, maybe 10 years? 5 million? Oh, no, not 5 million, that's for sure, right? But yet petrified trees in the vertical position are found all over the planet. I'll just flash through some pictures real quick here. There are all kinds of petrified trees found standing up. and they're running through multiple layers, and the kids are being taught the layers are different ages, and yet here's one tree connecting them all. I'm having a hard time believing these layers are different ages. That's what I'm having. Central Alabama's got a large coal mine with a whole bunch of petrified trees standing up running through two seams of coal, the Blue Creek and the Mary Lee. Now they're going to tell you in school, for coal to form, a forest has to grow, and then it all falls over and turns into a swamp, and then it gets buried, and then new mud washes in on top, and the coal slowly forms from the forest that was buried. And then thousands of years later, another forest grows on top, and a whole new layer of coal formed. So if you find 2 layers of coal, oh, that took thousands of years. That's what they'll tell you in school. That's simply baloney. We'll cover more on coal formation on video 6, but if you look at the samples of trees found in this coal mine, you look at sample A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I mean, any freshman law student could tell you, hey folks, I think I can prove these 2 coal formations formed at the same time, very quickly. Within a few weeks or months of each other, that's for sure. Probably during the flood in the days of Noah. We'll cover more on that on video 6. In Cookeville, Tennessee, how far is Cookeville from here? 100 miles? What's that? 150 miles. In Cookeville, Tennessee, there's a coal mine with petrified trees standing, running. Here's coal at the bottom. The tree is coalified at the bottom, petrified in the middle, and coalified on top, where it went through a second coal seam. Same tree. By the way, why are coal seams generally found on top of layers of rock or clay? Wouldn't be a pretty poor place to grow a forest? Ought to be on top of soil, don't you think? Yeah. Polystrate fossils are found all over the world. In Joggins, Nova Scotia, there are dozens of petrified trees standing up, connecting different rock layers. Scientists go up there and look at them and just say, wow, that's curious. No, it's more than curious. It's devastating to your teaching that the layers are different ages. There's a brochure you can get from our bookstore. It's $2. It's got 30-some color pictures of petrified trees in the vertical position. Occasionally, the petrified trees are found upside down, running through many rock layers. Now we really got a problem. The evolutionists have 2 ways to solve this. They can say, well, Hovind, you know, the trees stood upright for millions of years while the layers formed around them. Or the trees grew through hundreds of feet of solid rock looking for sunlight. There's a third way to look at it. You know, maybe they were all buried in a big flood. You know, it's possible for 2 people to be looking at the same thing, and one of them is getting the wrong idea of what he's looking at. The Bible warned us that was going to happen. Knowing this first, there shall come in the last days scoffers. Did you know there are people that scoff at the Bible? I deal with them on a regular basis. I attract them like a lightning rod. They scoff, it says, because of their lust. There's no scientific reason for them to reject the Bible. They just don't like that book because it chaps their hide. So they're scoffing because of their lust, not because of their science, okay? Even Huxley admitted, I suppose the reason we leapt at origin of species was that the idea of God interfered with our sexual mores. We don't want God telling us what to do. Okay? Arthur Keith said evolution is unproved and unprovable. We believe it because the only alternative is special creation, and that is unthinkable. The Bible says they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. For this cause, God shall send them strong delusion. Anybody that believes they evolved from a rock 4.6 billion years ago, I would say is strongly deluded. You would have to have help to be that dumb. You could not do it on your own. You'd have to have years of training and conditioning to believe such a silly idea. Hey, is it possible for a person to go insane? I mean, absolutely loony? Oh yeah, it happens, doesn't it? Okay. Is it possible for an entire group of people to go insane? Can you imagine over 900 people drinking poison Kool-Aid and killing themselves? A whole group went insane. Is it possible for an entire nation to go insane? You know, like millions and millions of people go just plain old nuts? Oh, it's happened, folks. Hey, is it possible for the entire world to go insane? Well, the Bible says the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. I think we're living in a time when just about the whole world has gone nuts. They believe they come from a rock 4.6 billion years ago. How dumb can you get? 2 Peter goes on to say, where is the promise of His coming? That's what the scoffers are going to say. For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. That's an important phrase. The scoffers are going to say The way things are happening now is the way they've always been happening. Long, slow, gradual processes. The Bible says the scoffers are willingly ignorant. Willingly ignorant. In the Greek, that means dumb on purpose. They're willingly ignorant of how God made the heavens and the earth, and they're ignorant of the flood. The world was overflowed with water and perished. We cover more on that on videotape number 2 of our series. But one of the scoffers in the last days was a guy named James Hutton. Now, James Hutton lived in the late 1700s. James wrote a book and said the earth is millions of years old. So back when everybody thought the earth was a few thousand years old, James Hutton came along and said, oh no, it's lots older than that. And it got here by uniformitarianism. Ooh, kids, big word, bold print. That'll be on the test. They always are, okay? Uniformitarianism means the present is the key to the past. No, James, I think the Bible's the only perfect key to the past. But during this time frame, the Christians, instead of fighting against this new teaching of millions of years, they swallowed it. The Christians accepted the idea of a gap theory or day-age theory or progressive creation. They just accepted millions of years right into the Bible when it's obvious to anybody with half a brain and one eye reading the Bible that it does not teach the earth is millions of years old. That's not what it says. So the Christians did not put up an effective defense, an effective resistance to this teaching, and they allowed the church to believe all this. And then when evolution came out, 1859 became popular with Darwin's book, well, the Christians just accepted that too. Boy, what a tragedy. That book covers the great turning point in history, if you like the history of stuff. Well, James Hutton's book that he wrote had a real strong influence on a young lawyer from Scotland named Charles Lyell. Charles Lyell, the lawyer, hated the Bible. Somebody calculated one time that if all the lawyers in the world were laid end to end around the equator, we would all be better off. Charles Lyell, in 1830, wrote this book right here, Principles of Geology. I've got it here on the table. You can come take a look at it. It's all marked up. In this book, you can see his hatred for the Bible kind of ooze off every page. He kept calling it ancient doctrines. He said, oh, you have a scriptural authority. He was mocking them, okay? He called it a religious prejudice. He said, men of superior talent, he's talking about himself, who thought for themselves and were not blinded by authority, he used every opportunity he could find to mock the Scriptures. And kids, you won't have to go to college very far before you're going to run into a professor that has this mocking attitude toward God's Word. How many of you had one when you went through school? Seems like their whole goal in life is to destroy your faith. I had a bunch of them when I went to school. They just wanted to destroy your confidence. Well, Charles said his goal was to free the science from Moses. What do you suppose he meant by that? Well, before Charles Lyell wrote his book, everybody looked at the geology, looked at Grand Canyon and said, wow, look what the flood did. He didn't like people interpreting Earth's history in light of the Bible. He wanted them to interpret Earth's history in terms of millions of years. Lyell is the primary guy responsible for inventing what today is known as the geologic column. How many have ever heard of the geologic column before? They divided the Earth up into layers and gave them names, you know. Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Archaeozoic, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you saw the movie Jurassic Park, named after the Jurassic layer, okay? Each layer of rock was given a name and an age and an index fossil. Now keep in mind, all this was done in 1830 before there ever was a carbon dating, potassium-argon dating, rubidium-strontium dating, lead-208, lead-206, uranium-235, uranium-238. None of those had even been thought of. So they didn't determine these great ages by any radiometric decay method. They just picked the numbers out of the clear blue sky. Now, Charlie Darwin didn't like round numbers, so he said the Wealdian deposits are 306,662,400 years old. How could he possibly know such a thing? Okay. It's a fact the Earth has many layers of sedimentary rock. That is just a fact. You can see them all over Tennessee here. How'd they get there? Well, there are two interpretations. One group says the layers formed slowly over millions of years. The other group says, no, these layers are all from the flood in the days of Noah. And again, they're always trying to erase that line between the two and make their interpretation become part of the fact. And it's just not, okay? It's just their interpretation, that's all. The geologic column is actually the Bible for the evolutionist. The only place you'll ever find it is in the textbooks. It doesn't exist. This guy admits it. He said, if there were a column of sediments, unfortunately, no such column exists. Did you know there is no geologic column? If there was, it'd be 100 miles thick. It doesn't exist. It's one of the lies in the textbooks. And actually, all of evolution is based on this lie right here. This is one of the most serious ones, in my opinion. It's true the Earth has layers. That's not the question. Okay? How did they get there, though? I mean, if that layer sat there for 10 million years waiting for the next one, don't you think it's going to rain once in a while in 10 million years? Why are there no erosion marks between the layers? Why are they stacked on top of each other just like a stack of pancakes? And by the way, why are there no soil layers between the rock layers? I mean, soil builds up on top of rock. Don't you think there'd be some soil built up once in a while? Look, if you get a jar of dirt and rocks and gravel and sand and mud and shake it up and set it down, it settles into layers for you in a few minutes. It doesn't take long. How many seen those things you buy at the mall with 2 pieces of glass and different colored sand in between? You know, you flip it over and it makes all kinds of layers just in a few seconds. It doesn't take long.
Nobody is saying that there are polystrate fossils connecting layers that are separated by millions of years. So that's just a total straw man. There's no one is saying that. Polystrate fossils are extremely well characterized in the scientific consensus. Like, we understand what causes them. They're not a big problem for the evolutionary model. And he didn't really answer the question that was asked, I felt, about like the ages of the different layers and everything. So I'll just leave it at that.
So what we see is the evidence. They don't really support evolution. When you go and study deep the evidence, when you analyze the interpretation there, you see that they do not support evolution. They actually confirm creation. They confirm what the Bible is saying. When you go, for example, when you see papers, and this is not, oh, you're just picking one. No, you have tons of those papers. You see, here's this later deposit were deposit much more rapidly, accumulated in days by rapid sinking. These, for example, here in Mount St. Helens, you see a lot of material that was deposited in only 3 hours. So you see this, you have a human there just to compare in only 3 hours that all material was deposited here. And look at this. I don't know if you're going to see, but all the layers are very well on top of the other. They're all on top of the other. And you see the same thing happening right here in Argentina. So what happened? You see this happening when you do that in the lab. That happens when it's a rapid deposition, when it's a fast deposition. It's how you're going to see those layers like that. One time I was in the field with a colleague, and then he's not a Christian or anything. He said, well, I asked him how many thousands of years, how many millions of years. I asked that just to hear what he was thinking between those layers. And he said, Gabby, it's around 2 to 5 million years between those layers. And I said, what's interesting is because those layers are so on top of the other, very well deposit, that in 2 to 5 million years, no wind, no animal, no water, nothing destroyed. It was just like perfectly in that way, and it stayed that way for 2 or 5 millions, and then the other one was deposited. And he was like, oh, I never thought about it. So details like that, we have to think, and we also have to ask people around us to make things a little bit more, make them think a little bit more about what they're seeing. So here's another paper about a piece of wood becoming a fossil. Look how many times the word rapid and rapidly comes up. Here you see some boots that became fossil. A hat, and then ham. Here, flour. We also see animals eating each other. And then a paper just was published 2 or 3 days ago, talking about a shark that was eating, I don't remember. This shark was eating this animal, and that animal was eating another animal. So it happened so fast that all the animals were eating each other, and it became a fossil. Because normally what they do when we have, for example, fossil like that, they say, oh, it was eating and it got and it choked with the food. So that's why that fish died. But we have seen so many fossils of those that it's impossible to believe in that kind of argument. See, it's eating, this one is giving birth. So it shows, and we have also terms in the secular literature that talks about something happening really fast, very, very rapid situation happening. That's why you can find those fossils like that. Here you have a wasp. That's one of the wasps that I studied during master's and PhD. And you see the wings open. The wings are open, and you see, well, normally insects, when they die, they close the wings and they cross the legs, and this one, it's open. That's the reason why we can study insects in the fossil record, because we have to see the wing. So what was happening? They were actually flying. That's one of the ideas, that it's reasonable to think that they were flying.
Right. Also, I'm glad that Mark is back, because I don't think that he was kicked for good reasons.
Okay. So, Grayson, you several times in the last few minutes said, scientists say, scientific consensus, blah, blah, blah. What if some scientists started saying, wow, these layers are all the same age within a year of each other, where tidal pumping would form all that? It is scientific. First of all, do you speak for all scientists? There are quite a few scientists who do not believe the layers are all different ages. There are quite a few scientists who, first of all, in order to be a scientist in your mind, you have to believe in evolution. Otherwise, you're not a scientist. Is that correct?
Nope, you just have to do science.
Okay, you said the scientists agree. Would I be considered a scientist?
No.
Because I don't agree with them.
Well, to my knowledge, you've never published any peer-reviewed scientific article or experiment in any science journal, or...
Is that how you become a scientist?
Generally, yes.
So in Iraq, are there any published peer-reviewed journals that publish articles against Islam?
No, those will not be scientific articles.
No, are there any articles published in any magazines in Iraq that are against Islam, period? Is the peer-reviewed process is what I'm trying to get to. Peer-reviewed, I'm not sure exactly, peer-reviewed, let's see. Does majority prove something is true, which is what you're kind of relying on here? Are there any majority opinion articles in China against communism, or in North Korea against communism? Could it be that just like in certain countries around the world, there have always been a majority believes something, like Hitler, and you have to believe that or they're going to kill you? Could it be that there's a consensus against creation in this country, and you're not going to get published in a peer-reviewed journal if you don't believe in evolution? Okay, science is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. I can make 20 layers right here in this sand thing in 5 minutes. Because the sideways movement of the water automatically sorts particles by density, by surface friction with the water. There's a different watch the video, experiments in stratification. The layers form sideways when the water's moving sideways. Exactly what we would have in Noah's flood, with the earth turning under the moon, holding this big tidal bulge. The moon made all the layers to the earth by the tidal pumping in and out. Every 6 hours, 12.5 minutes, it would change. So you're wanting me to believe that this Holocene dirt and the Pleistocene and all these different layers of dirt on top are billions of years younger. I keep asking the question, where did it come from? Is it coming from outer space? Are layers being added to the earth? Is it growing like tree rings?
No, and I've answered this countless times now. Multiple people have. Like, it comes from like deposition, volcanism, and metamorphic processes. It's not coming from space. People have explained this to you so many times, Kent. And like, yeah, I mean, you brought up a lot of different points right there. But yeah, I can just leave it at that and let somebody else.
Well, let me
talk.
jump in real quick.
Would it be okay if I say something real fast?
Hold on, guys. Let Donnie respond, and then Dr. Hovind can respond, and then we'll let the next evolutionist have their say.
Well, I want Dr. Hovind to respond, because my question to Grayson would be, you've quote unquote responded to that question dozens of times apparently, but hasn't Kent responded to your responses dozens of times with volcanism and deposition, for example, erosion? I personally asked Kent if those answers would satisfy Kent's question. He's responded. And so, Kent, why don't we hand it over to you, and feel free to respond again.
Would it be okay if I say something real fast?
Well, first of all, how is volcanism? A volcano is taking material that already exists, heating it up, changing it to lava, shooting it out, and it's landing again. Is it now a different age? It's the same material, been reheated.
Because
this is you're not answering the question. No. Where is the new material coming from? Rearranging it, changing it to metamorphic rock. There's thousands of layers of sedimentary rock. That's not metamorphic. I mean, that's not igneous. Okay. Where's that new layer of sedimentary rock coming from? And why is it a different age?
For the 1000th time, you're not dating the actual material itself. You are dating the formation of the layer. I feel like I've been over this with you so many times. I don't know why you cannot just accept and comprehend that point. You are not dating the material itself. The atoms that make up my body are the same age as the atoms that make up your body, but we're different ages because we formed at different times. Like, come on, this is obvious to everyone. The atoms that make up my body are the same age as the atoms that make up your body, but we're different ages because we formed at different times. But we're different ages because we formed at different times. Like, come on, this is obvious to everyone.
Faulty analogy. A faulty analogy is saying that two things are alike in other ways just because they are alike in one way.
All right. Well, Grayson, thank you for that reply. I've promised AJ that he could ask Kent Hovind a question. AJ, you can ask your question now.
Okay. Am I still muted or no?
No, we hear you.
Okay. Okay. I just have one question for Kent. Kent, do you still believe that in order to prove evolution, we would have to witness a dog giving birth to a rat or a pine cone?
Well, the word evolution has 6 different levels, stages, or meanings. In order to see what you guys want us to teach and believe, we would have to see a dog producing something that anybody would consider a non-dog. Has that ever happened? Have you ever seen or heard of a dog producing a non-dog baby?
Okay, let me rephrase my question because it's extremely specific. Have you ever said that in order to prove evolution, we would have to witness a dog giving birth to a rat or a pine cone? Did you ever say that?
I have said you guys believe over billions of years the rat and the pine cone had a common ancestor and the dog. That's not science. No, I don't think I've ever said, maybe I have, I don't recall ever saying that a dog gave birth to a pine tree or a rat. But has there ever been any animal or tree or plant that's been observed to produce offspring other than its kind? This evolution only takes place in your imagination. If you just imagine billions of years ago or over millions of generations, we can't see that. That's not science. I wish you guys would admit you have a religion. We could get along fine.
I've already addressed this because we can't see an electron either. We can't see the Earth go round the sun. We have to take indirect evidence of these things. And I never got my question answered. AJ didn't get his answered because he asked you, have you said in order to convince you, or maybe I should rephrase it so you actually answer a question rather than this gish gallop that goes off topic.
But let me ask you, Mark, is there actually an answer that Dr. Hovind could ever give you that you would ever accept as an answer? Because He's answered your question in no less than 100 different manners, none of which are to your suitability.
No, he
What
hasn't.
answer
No, he
would
hasn't.
make you happy? What
The
answer,
question
Mark?
the question was, would it require you to see a dog coming from a non-dog in order to convince you of evolution? And he's gone on about fairy tales and imagination and all this stuff. That's not an answer to the question.
The answer
right.
to
Yes or no?
Burden of proof fallacy. The burden of proof lies with the one who makes a claim, not the one who denies it. The burden of proof fallacy happens when a person tries to remove their need to provide proof for many reasons. The burden of proof lies with the one who makes a claim, not the one who denies it. The burden of proof fallacy happens when a person tries to remove their need to provide proof.
Okay, the answer to the question is all everybody has ever observed in all of recorded history is dogs produce dogs, and we've gotten a pretty wild variety of dogs now, from Great Dane to Chihuahua. Nobody has ever observed anything go outside of what anybody would consider the dog kind. Now, the Bible says they will always bring forth after their kind. That's all we've ever observed. So why on earth would you guys want us to believe, we can imagine over millions of years, that the dog and the banana have a common ancestor? We know we can crossbreed dogs and wolves, coyotes and wolves, dogs and coyotes. They can all be crossbred. They're probably the same kind. But we can't crossbreed any of them with a banana. I'm trying to give illustrations where you guys will stop and comprehend. You don't understand that you have a religion. You believe the dog and the banana have a common ancestor. Don't you, AJ?
All right, AJ, I'm going to let you answer.
Okay, I would be more than happy to answer any of Ken's questions, but just I would like to get an answer to my question first, because I'm asking this in an extremely literal sense. Ken, have you ever said this exact sentence word for word? And I would like a yes or no answer, please. Did you ever say that in order to prove evolution, we would have to see a dog give birth to a rat or a pine cone? Did you ever say that sentence?
I don't recall. I may have. What difference would that make? It's not. We don't see it. Now back to my question. I don't recall. You can probably go back and search my tape. That's all you do with your job is search my video. Has anybody ever observed any animal produce? Let's take the dogs, for example. And all the wild varieties of dogs now available, has anybody ever observed a birth coming from one of these creatures that anybody would consider a non-dog?
Okay, I thought we weren't going to make personal attacks. I thought that was going to happen, but you've just said that's all you do on your channel to AJ's, which is just a personal attack.
This channel, all of his videos are about me. He wouldn't be anything without me. I've made his.
Yeah, well, it's better than the homophobia you have on
so Mark, do you have another question about if you have another question about evolution or creation, you can ask it now. If you don't have another question, Mark, then I'm going to give it to base theory. And that's the way this game is going to play. If you don't like the rules, go play a different game at a different table. That's the offer. Base theory, go.
I will respect what you just said, Stephen, because I was about to kick him for this comment and ban him from this discussion, but I will respect you.
All right, base theory. You have a question for Kent?
Sure. I like this study right here. If I could share my screen.
I'll share it for you.
Cool. Yeah. Statistical evidence for common ancestry. This is the statistical test that I was talking about, where they actually examined the genetic data and tested separate ancestry or common ancestry and created heterozygosity, like Donnie brought up, would absolutely not change this test in the slightest. So how do you explain this test, which definitively shows that common ancestry is supported by the data and separate ancestry is discarded by the data?
It would change the results. I'll say that.
Oh,
okay.
Yes.
I would have to read. I didn't read it. You flash it up on screen real quick. If there is common genetics, is that what they're talking about? And they've come to the conclusion that this means common ancestry. I would say that is silly. It could just as well mean a common designer.
Kent, I want to jump in because Grayson was very vague. All that study showed, and I've responded to this years ago. Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson, PhD from Harvard, responded to this. All it revealed is that there's genetic level hierarchies. We share more with the chimpanzee than we do with a dog or with a fish. So it just shows that there's a nested hierarchy in the biological world. That doesn't prove common ancestry more than it proves separate ancestry. I just wanted to be a little more detailed.
Yeah,
that's you're too vague, Grayson. You got to give more details on these papers.
Okay, I was server muted there for a second. All right, if I'm allowed to talk right now, the study itself did account for this whole contention of common design by specifically controlling for functionality. So they showed whether or not these things were similar just because they were like serving common functions, and they definitively ruled that out.
No, it just showed hierarchies.
See, now
and
Donnie's
so the question
interrupting
is,
me,
what
he's
best
allowed to interrupt. I'm not allowed to
explain
interrupt,
nested
but Donnie's
hierarchies,
allowed to interrupt
creation or
anybody.
evolution. It just showed hierarchies. That's
We
it.
get some moderation to control Donnie because
well, base theory, you've had 4 opportunities to present your arguments now, and Donnie has spoken twice. So if we're going to go off of a fair time scale, it would be fair for you to allow Donnie to respond, unless you're afraid of the information that
it's not that he's responding, though.
In the
He's
middle of his
interrupting me.
sentence. Come on. Yeah.
He's interrupting me in the middle of a sentence. That's different. But
all right.
Okay.
Thank you, Grayson.
What we should do, to be fair, is hand it back to Kat. And essentially the question based on this paper is, does the existence of nested hierarchies demonstrate common ancestry? Because that's all it demonstrated. So Kat, feel free to respond.
Well, I think if there is common genetics between us and an ape and us and other creatures, we could come to one of 2 conclusions: common ancestor or common designer. It could be, he said, the study did account for functionality. I would say the code required to make the incredible billions of lines of code just to make you be able to use your flexors and extenders and to be able to flex your fingers in and out, I think that would take a whole lot of lines of code. Get a computer to do that, okay? The robots they've got, okay? There's a lot of lines of code to make the robot just do that. The monkey does the same thing. So we probably have identical lines of code for the monkey to close his fist and for us to close ours, not because of common ancestor, but because of common designer. That's the way you have to have the lines of code. So again, you're jumping to the wrong conclusion. So you said they accounted for functionality like we're supposed to just, oh, wow, you're right. Okay, no. It could just as well prove the same designer wrote the code. My PowerPoint program and my Microsoft Word both take me to the same spell check. Millions of lines of code for spell check in 2 different programs. Wow. That proves they both evolved from an explosion in a print factory. This is the logic you guys have. You see similarities and conclude ancestry instead of concluding designer. The code that we're talking about, Grayson, is so complex. The code, the DNA code, is more complex than all the lines of code ever written by man combined. It's unbelievable. They say if you took the chromosomes from one person, unwound them, tied them all together, 46 chromosomes for each of your 100 trillion cells, it would go across the solar system twice. That's the code we're talking about. And so the monkeys have thousands of lines of identical code. Still doesn't prove common ancestor. How can you not get it?
All right.
It could prove common designer. My last point would be, even if it's true that it's common ancestor, it's not science yet. We can't demonstrate it. It shouldn't be taught in schools. It's still just a hypothesis. It shouldn't be taught at taxpayer expense where everybody's required to pay for your religion to be taught. I'm going to fight that till I die, and then my videos are going to go a long time after that. So good luck with that one.
All right, Mark, you'll have another chance to respond, but I want to let Ken Rock get a question in because I believe he's on your guys' side and he hasn't had a chance to say anything yet. So Ken Rock, go ahead.
Thank you. Am I caught up with you guys? My device is kind of lagging.
No, yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay, sweet. So the first thing I would like to respond to and ask Kent is, he says that we never see creatures come from other kinds, but we got like cows that were produced by the ancestors known as buffalo. We have dogs which come from wolves, and we have the banana which was related to the plantain. So how can you sit there with those three examples alone and say we don't know any kinds that's come from other kinds?
Okay, it was very garbled. I'm not sure I got all that. You said we do have cows, varieties of cows that came from. I know you said. I think you said we have dogs came from wolves. I would agree with that. But
dogs came from wolves. Cows came from buffaloes, and bananas are related to plantains.
I don't know that cows came from buffalo, and cows and buffalo may indeed have a common ancestor, but it would look like a cow, a four-wheel drive, hoofed, split hoof, gives milk on the backside. So the females do. So I think that if you're saying that because cows and buffaloes are related, and wolves and dogs are related, therefore dogs are related to mosquitoes, this is what these textbooks teach. Look at this. Protozoa slowly turned into everything. Biology teacher, worms, mollusks, spiders, reptiles, frogs. This isn't science. This is propaganda. That's all.
When communists took over China, they began killing Christians at a rate of 15,000 a month. Missionaries that were there reported, those that survived, that got out of China, said, it was strange. When they came into our village, the communists came in, they didn't start teaching communism in the schools. The first thing they did in the schools was start teaching evolution. The communists know full well evolution is the foundation for communism.
I'm just objecting to these kind of charts being in our school textbook because it's simply not science. I'll find one that has a dog on there somewhere. But this is what they teach. You guys believe everything has a common ancestor. I would say the buffalo and the cow might have one. That'd be a good study. But what would that prove? Would that therefore prove that?
It would prove that different animals can come from a similar animal. Because I didn't say these things are related, therefore all things are related to mosquitoes. I just said these animals are different kinds of animals and they're related.
Well, that goes back to the definition of the word kind. There's 26 different definitions of the word species. And I'm not required to define what a kind is. I'm not asking my religion to be taught. I know the Bible says 24 times in the first 7 chapters, the animals will always bring forth after their kind. Nobody's ever given me an example of what they would consider a different kind. Do you think a buffalo and a cow are a different kind of animal?
All right, Grayson, I'm going to let you answer that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start with this. I mean, again, we can use evolution to make testable, repeatable, scientific predictions of like anatomical changes that would be observable in predicted layers of the fossil record. It checks out. It's a scientific theory. Universal common ancestry is accepted. I showed a study that's demonstrating that using statistics and genetics. So there you go. It's science.
So in a sense, what you're saying is we have X equals Y equals Z, and because there's a big circle of people that agree with each other, you're right.
No, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that every single reputable scientific institution from the National Academy of Science too, there are more scientists that believe in evolution and affirm evolution called Steve than there are scientists that don't believe in evolution. Do you realize that?
This would be an example of an odd populum fallacy. It is saying that if many people believe the president is doing a great job, then he is doing a great job. This is obviously not the case, since groups of people can be wrong. Hitler and the Nazi Party, for example, had high approval ratings. Does this mean Hitler did a great job?
The amount of people that are actually against evolution is so fleetingly
bogus.
the amount of scientists called Steve outnumber them. Like, it is such a marginalized view and religious view. And I
Mark,
never
can
got
I
my
ask
first
you a question?
Well,
How
I never
many-
got my first question answered.
Well, I
which was,
haven't been able to ask any questions tonight. So my question for you, Mark, my question for you, Mark, you're very rude. My question for you, Mark, if you're brave enough to answer it, and I will ask it now, is how many scientists are named Steve for you to make such a bizarre claim with an authoritative emotion behind it? Can you give me the number, please?
It's called the Steve Project that they did. Am I still muted?
No, I unmuted you.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's great that you sort of mute me right in the middle of me talking and interrupt me. It's not very cool.
Okay, so that's unproductive. Grayson, do you have another question for Dr. Hovind, or I'll give it back to Ken Rock?
To comment first before you.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Okay, these guys always resort to this majority opinion argument, which is a really weak argument and for anything. Is the majority opinion of China that communism is good? Yeah. Does that make it true? No. It means if you don't believe it, you don't get published in peer-reviewed journals, that's for sure. Majority opinion in China is that communism is good. That doesn't make it true. Majority opinion in Iran is that Islam is good. You believe Islam is good? The majority of people do. Okay. The majority opinion if you don't agree, they'll cut your head off. Yeah. All it means is somebody has taken control. The majority opinion in Nazi Germany was that Hitler was a good guy and everything's fine and Nazism's good and we should wipe out the inferior species, like the blacks and the Jews. Does majority opinion mean it's true? How many peer-reviewed journals published articles against Hitler during Hitler's reign? Probably none. You outlaw the opposition, you line them up and shoot them. Okay, they don't shoot them in our country, but they ban them from teaching in universities. So your argument for majority opinion is flawed on its surface, okay? It doesn't matter if everybody believed the moon was made of green cheese, that wouldn't make it made of green cheese. I think it's time, all through history, the history of science is somebody stands up and says, wait a minute, that's not true. For years, everybody said you can't get a heavier than air object to fly. The Wright brothers said, we think we can do it. Well, you can't do it. The majority opinion was against them. And guess what? They were right. So your whole argument for majority opinion is flawed and infantile, in my humble opinion. That doesn't mean anything. The fact is, where is the evidence of a dog producing a non-dog? I'll make a scientific prediction. You can go on breeding dogs from now till the cows come home, and you always get a dog, and there are limits. They have now gotten dogs as big as a Great Dane and small as a Chihuahua. I predict there are limits. I predict they will never get a dog as small as a flea, even though there are animals as small as a flea. I make a scientific prediction. There's a limit to the variety of dogs. How's that? And they'll never get one as big as an elephant. I just made it. So, and you keep changing, Mark, between believe and affirm. You caught yourself, didn't you? No, you believe in evolution. You don't affirm evolution. You believe in it. Okay, somebody, I didn't know I was going to be.
That was a question for me. Sure, I'll answer that. So affirm is sort of knowledge, and knowledge is a subset of belief. So in order to know something, you must, of course, believe it as well. There's no difference between that. And if you knew about how, like, critical thinking, you would know that. So they both affirm and they know and they believe that evolution is true and it's a science. And I think this is getting bad as a Darth Dawkins thing when I'm just getting cut off in the middle of what I'm saying. It's getting as bad as that. I never got my question answered, which was, what are other sciences doing that evolutionary biologists are not, that would make them sciences and evolutionary biology not? You keep saying, hey, we never observed this. And I've said, hey, we never observe, and Beansy gave a great one, we never observe Pluto going around the sun either. It's too dark. We can't see it. And it takes thousands of years to go around the sun. But we know that it will. And that is science too. The fact that we can't directly observe it doesn't make it not science, and that is affirmed by National Academy of Sciences, National Teaching Centre for Sciences, every single scientific institution, bar the religious ones. And all this is projection, with the Baptists going, hey, you're a religion and we're science. No, that's not how this works.
There's just no evidence of it. And this is why religions are called faiths, collectively. Because you believe something in the absence of evidence. That's what it is. That's why it's called faith.
That's not how this works. All you're doing is just trying to flip the script, and it's not going to work, Ken. It hasn't worked so far. It's never going to work.
It's probably never going to work for you. I agree. Okay. But I think everybody would say what we've observed is there are dogs that produce a variety of dogs. And again, you went right back to your majority opinion. Well, the National Academy of Science doesn't matter what the majority thinks or teaches. And you don't know that that is the majority. You know, that's the majority that gets to speak. There probably were a lot of people against Hitler that were afraid to speak out or were put in prison for speaking out. So your majority opinion argument is fatally flawed. Just leave it alone. Get a new argument, okay? Doesn't matter what everybody thinks. The fact is, we observe varieties of dogs. We observe there are limits. But you want to ignore the limits and say, wow, dogs are related to mosquitoes. They have a common ancestor. So I'll ask it real simply. Mark Reed, do you believe dogs and mosquitoes have a common ancestor like these charts show? Do you believe this should be required teaching, that all the insects, that include mosquitoes, are related to all the dogs? Do you believe they have a common ancestor? Just a yes or no, please, without a big speech. Please?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so I got to ask you to put you on my chart here. Do you believe you're related to a goldfish?
In a certain sense, yes. Okay. Because we all have a universal common ancestor.
Okay.
But I will say, in our very first debate, you already asked me this question, and it was with corn.
Oh, corn. I'm sorry. Okay.
So, but I don't know if I want to be the corn guy or the goldfish guy.
Take your choice. Which
okay. I'll pick the goldfish.
Goldfish, okay. I don't think that's science. I think that's a religious belief, and you're welcome to it. Keep your religion. This is America.
That's a religious belief.
Don't make me pay for your religion to be taught to all the kids. I'm going to fight that till I die. This is not
and what
science.
You just stated is a religious belief. That's a religious belief.
This is a belief you take on faith. You believe if we had billions of years, the protist would slowly turn to some of them to a mosquito and some to a dog. Do you believe the single-celled protist, or whatever one you want to start with, slowly over billions of years changed, even though we've never seen a protist produce a non-protist? We've never seen a cow produce a non-cow. We've never seen any of these creatures produce offspring. Some have a very short generation time. Some have an 8-hour generation time. Get born, grow up, get married, have babies in 8 hours. We could observe thousands and millions of generations. Why don't we see it happen today? It only happens in the distant past where we can't observe it. It's imagination. It's a religious belief. That's all.
Okay, I just would like to be clear, because earlier you would characterize my argument as being an argument for the consensus. I just want to say that's not at all what I ever said. I was bringing evidence, right? If there's evidence against the consensus, I'm going to go with the evidence. I'm bringing forward evidence showing that your model cannot be true and that the evidence is supporting common universal ancestry. So I would just like to say I'm not making an argument from consensus. I'm not doing any kind of religious argumentation here. I don't have any religious beliefs about this stuff. I'm purely being led by where the evidence shows. And we know the evidence from the speed of light, from the cosmic microwave background, from zircon dating. We know the ages of these things involved, and we know universal common ancestry from genetics and the fossil record.
It's the geologic time chart. They have it lit up and it's behind glass and it's holy and sacred. Don't dare touch that thing, you know. So we're standing over there and the guide said, now folks, this layer of rock right here is about 70 million years old. And it's so cool because they always get that sanctimonious tone in their voice, you know. 70 million years old. Oh. Well, my daughter was 12 years old at the time. She raised her hand. She said, Mister, how do you know that layer is 70 million years old? He said, honey, that's a good question. We tell the age of the layers by what types of fossils we find in them. They're called index fossils. And by the way, that's correct. That's what the textbook says. Scientists use index fossils to determine the age of rock layers. She said, thank you, sir. We walked around the other side. We're standing over here, and the guide said, now, folks, these bones are about 100 million years old. My daughter raised her hand again. She said, sir, how do you know those bones are 100 million years old? He said, well, honey, we tell the age of the bones by which layer they came from. She said, sir, when we were standing over there, you told me you knew the age of the layers by the bones, and now you're telling me you know the age of the bones by the layers. She said, isn't that circular reasoning? I thought, wow, a chip off the old block. That guide had the strangest look on his face. It was almost as if he were thinking. He looked at my daughter, he looked at me. I wasn't about to help him. I thought, wow, this is going to be good. I have got to hear this. He looked back at my daughter, he said, wow, you're right, that is circular reasoning. He said, I never thought of that before.
Circular reasoning. The circular reasoning fallacy is an argument that assumes the very thing it is trying to prove is true. Instead of offering evidence, it simply repeats the conclusion, rendering the argument logically incoherent.
Afterwards, he talked to me for an hour. He said, Hovind, is everything I believe about geology wrong? I teach this stuff at the college. I said, oh, no, I like geology. I've got a huge fossil collection, rock collection, mineral collection. I teach earth science. I love studying geology. I said, but as far as the layers being different ages, I said, yes, sir, I'm sorry. That is all baloney. It's based on circular reasoning. I'll show you. Here's a textbook that tells the kids to date the rocks by the fossils, and on the very next page it says date the fossils by the rocks. On the next page, and they don't catch it. It's a lie. It's circular reasoning. The intelligent layman has long suspected circular reasoning in the use of rocks to date fossils and fossils to date rocks. The geologist has never bothered to think of a good reply, feeling the explanations are not worth the trouble as long as the work brings results. It cannot be denied from a strictly philosophical standpoint. Geologists are arguing in a circle. The relative ages of rocks are determined by the organisms they contain. They date the rocks by the fossils and the fossils by the rocks. Ever since the beginning of the 19th century, fossils have been and still are the best and most accurate method of dating and correlating the rocks in which they occur. Apart from very modern examples, which really are archaeology, I can think of no cases of radioactive decay being used to date fossils. They don't date fossils by potassium-argon dating or carbon dating. That's not how they do it. Radiometric dating would not even be possible if the geologic column had not been erected first. There's no way simply to look at a fossil and say how old it is unless you know the age of the rocks it comes from. This is Niles Eldredge, one of the most famous evolutionists alive today. He said, and this poses something of a problem. Yeah, something poses a big problem, Niles. If we date the rocks by the fossils, how can we then turn around and talk about patterns of evolutionary change through time in the fossil record? Circular reasoning. This guy said the rocks do date the fossils, but the fossils date the rocks more accurately. I think the cheese done fell out of his sandwich. That's what I think. Okay, he's a few fries short of a Happy Meal. It's based on circular reasoning, okay? This guy said the charge of circular reasoning can be handled several ways. It can be ignored as not the proper concern of the public. It can be denied by calling down the law of evolution. It can be admitted as a common practice or avoided by pragmatic reasoning. But it is all based on circular reasoning. Actually, at the Scopes monkey trial, 1925, over here in Dayton, Tennessee. How far is Dayton from here, Steve? About 100 miles, okay. This is what they were going to use as evidence for evolution. The lowest layers are obviously the oldest. Page 275 of the court transcript. No, the oldest layers are not obviously the oldest. Did you know in still water, sediment layers settle out, the bottom one first, and then the second one, and then the third one. That's correct. But in moving water, you can get 5 or 6 or 10 layers to form simultaneously. They form from one end and travel across. So it's possible to have a fossil on the bottom that is younger than a fossil on top if it's moving water. There's a great video tape called Experiments in Stratification. It covers all that if you want more on that. Or get our video number 6. We'll get more of that later. I like to ask evolutionists, I say, guys, your geologic column contains limestone quite a few places. If I handed you a piece of limestone, how would you know if it's 100 million year old Jurassic limestone or 600 million year old Cambrian limestone? I mean, exactly what's the difference? They'd say, well, the only way to tell the difference is by the index fossils. That's precisely my point. They date the layers by the fossils. This textbook shows the kids a trilobite, and it says, boys and girls, trilobites make good index fossils. If a trilobite is found in a rock layer, the rock layer probably formed 500 to 600 million years ago. I don't think so. Somebody found a human shoe print where the guy with a shoe on had stepped on and smashed a trilobite. They asked evolutionists all over, how on earth could a human step on a trilobite? If trilobites lived 500 million years ago and man didn't get here till, 3 million years ago, and they didn't start wearing shoes till 10,000 years ago, how could a human step on a trilobite? One atheist said, well, it's obviously. The only answer would be that aliens visited the planet 500 million years ago. Oh, them aliens will do it every time. Another guy said, well, maybe there was a large trilobite shaped like a shoe that fell on a small one. Now, there are some big trilobites, okay, but I don't think they're shaped like a shoe. Actually, the trilobite has the most complicated eyeball ever. Trilobite eyes are unbelievable. And this is one of the first creatures to evolve, and it already has the most complex eye, which just the eye is one of the most complex features you could have. Now, trilobites are not index fossils for anything, okay? There are all kinds of different types of trilobites, and there probably are some still alive today. Certainly the Baltic isopod is still alive. A guy sent me a couple weeks ago, about a couple months ago, I guess, a whole jar full of trilobites from the Prudhoe Bay water treatment plant up there for the oil factory they've got, oil refining rig. When they arrived in Pensacola, Florida, they were still alive in the jar. But I don't know how to keep a trilobite alive. I mean, you give it mouth to what? Some resuscitation, but they all died, but we got them in our museum there. Somebody just sent me a large one that they got down in the Caribbean, about this big. It's in our museum, and it was frozen. They said, yeah, I pulled it off the rock myself down in the Caribbean, still alive. They call it some kind of roach. Roach, it looks like a big trilobite. This textbook shows the kids a graptolite. It says, boys and girls, this is 410 million years old. I don't think so. Graptolites were found still alive in the South Pacific 10 years ago. So if you find graptolite, you can't use that as an index fossil for any age rock, okay? They tell the kids in school the lobe-finned fish is the index fossil for Devonian, 325 million years old. See that short leg, boys and girls? He's got a little bitty leg and then the fin. See, that proves he's evolving from a leg to a fin. No, that's a lie. The lobe-finned fish are still alive today. They're swimming around the Indian Ocean. And when they caught the first one in 1938, the scientists looked at it and said, wow, would you look at that? They survived for 325 million years. It never dawned on them once to question the geologic column. That thought never crossed their brain. You don't question the geologic column. It is holy and sacred. You just have to say it survived for 325 million years. It's in the textbooks today. And they still say it's the index fossil for 325 million year old rock, even though they know they're swimming around the ocean. How can they be that dumb? This lady wrote a book about it, A Fish Caught in Time. She says, boys and girls, this is our own great uncle, 40 million times removed. She does look a little fishy, kind of around the gills there. Okay. You're going to be told that dinosaurs are index fossils for the Jurassic period, 70 million, or Cretaceous, 70 million years ago. That's baloney. Dinosaur bones were found here recently that had blood cells still in them. How long are the blood cells going to last? Here's soft tissue found with dinosaur bones, still flexible, soft tissue in March of 2005. Here's fossilized human hands found in the same rock strata as dinosaur bones.
Okay, Grayson, we've been over this a couple times. Let's take one topic at a time. There is no such thing as a fossil record. There are fossils by the trillions, but none of them talk. None of them have a date on them. You have to put your interpretation on them. This is a detective arriving on the scene, seeing the evidence, and trying to come to the conclusion of what happened. You see, the layers of the earth contain different types of dead things that have turned to fossils. I see the same layers. I got a huge fossil collection here. You saw it, okay? You come to the conclusion that these are, somehow those fossils that we find were able to do something that no animal today can do. That fossil whale was able to produce a non-whale baby or change to something else. I see the evidence of, wow, dogs always make baby dogs. I bet they did in the past too. So evident, you did not offer any evidence against my consensus or my theory. I believe they always bring forth after their kind. You said you cited a genetic study, which I've not had time to read, but I think Donnie is right. if there are similarities in the gene code of all these different creatures, that doesn't prove common ancestry, doesn't prove relatedness. It proves the same designer wrote the code.
So it actually doesn't, and we can point to cases of what we would call convergent evolution. I don't know what your term is, but you can find things that have very, very common design that have very, very different genetics. So common design is not a successful way to determine what the genetics should be. So therefore, it fails as an explanation for common nested hierarchical patterns of genetics. Common design fails as an explanation for that.
Well, you're saying that, but I disagree. You didn't give any specifics I can cut my teeth into. What we've observed is we've seen hundreds of varieties of creatures, like cows produce cows, and there's now 450 recognized breeds of cows. Okay? Farmers have noted they've reached a limit. Probably all the cows had a common ancestor called a cow. I accept the fact that cows can jump. Nobody argues that. The world record now, I think, is a cow jumping over a 6-foot fence. Okay? But I bet there's a limit. I bet there are animals that can jump higher than a cow. So I accept the fact they can jump. I do not accept the fact that if we work at it long enough, they'll be able to jump over the moon. That would be an illogical conclusion. There are lots of things that would limit that. I accept the fact that we get Chihuahuas and Great Danes from a common ancestor. I do not accept the fact that therefore mosquitoes and Chihuahuas have a common ancestor. That's your wild conclusion. This is not looking at the evidence and coming to a logical conclusion. What if we discover the mosquito DNA has lots of identical lines of code to the dog DNA? And they probably do. Maybe they both have DNA code that allows limbs to flex and bend. Well, the dogs do that, and the mosquitoes have legs that bend. It doesn't prove common ancestry. It proves a common designer. Actually, neither could be proven, I suppose. They're both religious beliefs. The difference is, I admit mine's a religion. You don't admit yours is a religion. You're desperately clinging on to it. And it's nothing but a religion. Evolution is nothing but a dangerous religion.
Grayson, I'll give you another chance to reply, but Donnie has a question, and Dustin has a question, and Mark Reed wants to get back. So, okay. Donnie, go ahead with your question.
Well, Donnie said he was away from the keyboard right now, so.
Oh, okay. So, Dustin, go ahead with your question.
Hey, Ken Hovind, why do you suppose that there are no future predictions as far as the evolutionists are concerned? Like, for example, what next evolutionary step that animals might take, or what next evolutionary step humans might take?
I don't know why they don't make predictions. I have a book that's full of predictions. I predict we're going to see the world get really bad. I predict we're going to see a time where cash is no longer used. It's going to have to be an all electronic transaction. That was predicted 2,000 years ago. I can give you lots of predictions in the book, if you like. I predicted 600 years before it happened that Jesus would be born in Bethlehem to a virgin. Wow. I believe that happened. But so we're back off topic a little bit. So I don't think evolution offers any predictions. I think you would see if we've been able to breed dogs that are lots of different varieties of dogs, nobody argues with that. They've now developed the greyhound that can run really fast. I predict they will never be able to get one with wings on it that can go 2,000 miles an hour. I predict there's a limit to speed. I predict there's a limit to size. I predict they're not going to see anything beyond what we've probably already reached the limit in just about all these. Probably Chihuahuas about as small as teacup Chihuahua. Get me a dog as small as a flea, or a dog as big as a whale. There's animals out there as big as a whale, like a whale. So why does it seem to be a limit? All the evolutionists, they make these charts and show, look at all these dog varieties, yeah? This was the guy, I forget his name now, Stephen. He said, yeah, we have these dogs from India, China, North America, Europe. I agree. And they came from a gray wolf. Okay, I agree. But then they want me to teach that all these dogs are related to a common ancestor with a mosquito. That's where it's not only not science, it's just plain silly. Just plain silly, okay?
All right, we have... your hour is up, Dr. Hovind, so we would love for you to stick around if you'd like, but you are technically free of your obligation now. I'm going to let Mark Reed ask one more question. He's been saving it. Unless you do want to stick around a little bit longer, it's up to you, Doctor. But Mark, go ahead, Doctor.
I'll stick around a little longer and give my closing comment, and then I do have to go. Yeah, go ahead, Mark. Let's hear it.
Yeah, the only reason the subject's changing is you're changing it, Ken. There's plenty of predictions in evolutionary science. But the one that I want to ask was, you said there's a limit on how big dogs can grow, how big this can, how big that can grow. Can you please provide me with a citation for a paper that shows that limit that you're talking about, and what physical mechanism in the actual organism would do this? Could you please point out specifically where that is? And can you please provide me the reference to a paper outlining the genetic sequence that limits the growth of the animal?
So you're still stuck on majority opinion because it's not in a peer-reviewed article, therefore it's not science. Okay? Yeah, you are too. You're stuck completely in that little mode, okay? Okay, I think all of human observation will tell you nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. Nobody. A lot of dogs have been raised down through history. I mean, like a whole bunch of them. Nobody's ever observed what you guys believe happened. You want to put the dog on a family tree with a line connecting it back to the mosquito family tree. And you want to call that science. It's not science. So as far as you said, there's a lot of predictions. Okay, I don't think you didn't give any examples. But anyway, my hour's up. I'm beat. I got to go. It's been a long day. So Mark, call Donnie, schedule another debate, pick one topic only, and we'll stay on that topic. I think the evidence from all the genetic research shows there's a lot of lines of code that are similar. Round. That's what it shows. It does not.
You've never stayed on topic in any of our debates, Kent. That's the problem.
Okay. All right. Donnie, or who else?
Stephen.
Stephen.
I know, Doctor. It's been a long day for you.
I love these. I'm going to defend these till I die. You guys want to believe you came from a rock, which came from a dot of nothing exploding. And Grayson believes everything fit in a dot because they've been able now to do it. Or I don't think they've done it, but okay. So you guys believe what you want. I pray for you. I'd like to see you come to the Lord. Come visit our ministry. Alabama. Hold on, I'm not done talking here. You're all invited here. You're invited to call me, 855 Big Dino, extension 3. I take calls all day and half the night. And you're invited to debate me anytime on the topic. I want to see where's the evidence for these crazy family trees. There isn't any. You want me to pay to have all the kids taught that a human and a bird and a ladybug have a common ancestor. I'm never going to be happy with that. Move on to somebody else, because I'm going to fight that till I die. That is propaganda. That's not science. You might infer that from the genetics. Okay. Anyway, I got to go. Thank you so much for having me, Stephen. I'm so sorry I forgot it was late, but we'll do it again another night. Okay. I'm beat. See you tomorrow. Bye.
All right.
Thank you for all you do, Doc. I can't wait to see you again.
Flawless victory.
Much love, Ken Hovind.
Well, that was disappointing. He didn't really answer any questions. I feel like the dodging was incredible.
You did answer the questions, Mark. If you didn't like the question, if you didn't like the answers, I'm sorry, but he did answer the questions.
I mean, honestly, it's a failure to communicate, Mark, because he never fully understands the question you're asking, and you never fully accept the answer that he gives. Like, you guys talk past each other.
No, because I ask things like, what is this thing doing that isn't? And it's just sort of these talking points, these things that we've all heard 10 million times before that don't have anything to do with the question. That's the problem. And I gotta say, like, he goes on to sort of make 4 points in a row, and I try to address them, and then you blame me for bringing up multiple points. That's the shtick. That's the gish gallop in a nutshell.
I did hear him answer your questions, and if you didn't like the answers that he gave you, I don't know we can't really do anything about that. That's just the way it is, and we just can't keep going over one question formatted in a different way 20 different times. It's not productive.
Not just that, but there's one Kent Hovind. There were 3 of you guys, and Mark, you overtalk a lot. I like you, but you overtalk a lot.
So, Mark, what are some of these?
Wait, Dustin.
I know that if people do overtalk me, I give them the same treatment. I'm not afraid to roll around in the mud if people want to do that. But people interrupt me, I'll interrupt them. You'll probably notice that I have a reciprocal way of talking to people. If they respect me, I respect them. The problem is that when you're sort of just interrupting me, and then when I say, hey, you interrupted me, you just interrupt me again. I'm not going to respect you at that point, Stephen, because you've started interrupting me. That's at the point where I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to hold my tongue like I usually do.
Okay. Right.
I don't see why I should.
But then when you escalate it and it gets to a point where it's borderline disrespectful, that then forces my hand to escalate. And as an American, I just dropped the atomic bomb, and I will turn
You
Australia.
are-
I will turn
you are
Australia into a parking lot. So I mean, that's
You
just where we're at.
sidecar instigator.
Well, do
So
so.
we have Donnie here. Donnie, is he going to be taking the floor now? Is that what we're going to be doing?
Yes, Donnie's here, and I don't know if he's back from his keyboard yet, but as soon as he is, we'll let the guys continue engaging. But if you guys,
Base theory.
what? Hold on, Dustin. Achilles, go ahead.
Mark, you asked a very simple question at the beginning, and you made me happy.
Yes.
Okay, who is having a phone?
Who is that?
I have no idea. It's not me.
Ryan.
Look like Ryan. Okay, the guilty person just showed up. Okay, so you asked a very simple question. You got a very simple answer.
I don't think they want to hear what
Wait
you've
a
got to
minute.
say.
You just spent 5 minutes explaining why you don't want to get interrupted. Allow me.
No. You were interrupted by music. I was referring to the music.
Oh,
you didn't hear that?
No. Okay, I was asking a question, and because there are too many on the panel,
down
this is
under
kind of
Mark.
tough.
There's too
Ryan,
much crosstalk. Too much crosstalk.
Guys, one at a time. Jiminy Cricket, hard.
So, you asked a definition for science. You got the definition of science. Immediately, let me finish. And immediately, you said that, oh, this is what you always do. You are going back to an archaic version of the definition on the 1930s dictionary. And he gave you a response, and I brought up Google, as he said, showing you that this is right now the definition of science as he gave you. But from that point on, you kept going on that was not a definition, and we spent 45 minutes going back and forth on that subject.
We can't do that.
All right, Mark, hold up. Actually, you're muted.
Mark.
The systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation.
Bring it up. Where are you reading it? Bring it up.
The Oxford Languages, the first definition, number one.
My brother, I told you Google. I don't know why you went to Oxford.
Excuse me, I'm trying to read this out. Like,
Achilles, let him read it.
What do you mean Google? Google doesn't have definitions just built into it. What are you talking about?
Mark,
it's a search
share
engine.
Your screen. And then after you read this, I'm going to actually, while you're pulling that up, Mark, because if you're reading it, I want to see it with my own eyes. Prove it to me. And also,
are we talking about the definition of science still?
Open, 1 second. Praise, welcome to the panel. I'm sorry I wasn't able to greet you earlier. Thank you for coming back, and this should be fun.
You need me to zoom in.
Appreciate you having me, man. And I'd like to respond to Mark on Project Steve. I think that he is misleading there. So come on, Mark. That is disingenuous, man. I'm going to respond to that. Go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, I can respond to it now if you guys want me to.
Oh, no, go ahead, Mark. Can you read for me, please?
Tell us about Project Steve.
It should be up on the screen. No. I want to address this. It should be up on the screen right now.
Please read for me.
The systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and the testing of theories against evidence obtained.
Stop right there. It's done. Isn't that what he was talking to you about? Are you a mature person or not?
Do you see the child's thing on the right? What is science? The word science has come from a Latin word that means knowledge. This is called the etymological fallacy.
And then he continued, Mark.
Excuse me, I'm talking.
He continued. What you are doing right now.
Let's go one at a time.
This fallacy means that you're taking the old usage of a word, or in an etymological sense, word's etymology, its development, applying it to what it means now, and that is a fallacy.
And when I said a genetic fallacy, Kent thought I was talking about genetics. No, a genetic fallacy is basically where the origins of something, you're saying, hey, it means this because of the origins. That's a fallacy.
Genetic fallacy. The genetic fallacy is the act of rejecting or accepting an argument solely on the basis of its origin rather than its content.
Right, so
it's like when I explained that the F word comes from German meaning to strike. So if I said, hey, because it comes from German meaning to strike, it's not a swear word, that's a fallacy of etymology. That's not what it means anymore. And the same is true if you want to refer to the Latin and the old usage of science as knowledge. And I brought up the definition, I showed you. That is the new definition. That is the definition it has been for hundreds of years.
It's not changing the definition.
Okay, but what you've done is ignore his answer, like the headphones you are wearing are going through something that I don't know if it's there anymore. You ignored the fact. You ignored the fact that he continues his answer.
Guys,
let me finish.
That's just
you ignore the fact.
Actually, can I jump in real quick?
Donnie, go ahead and jump in, and then I'm going to let Praise start his engagement with